All right, hey there everybody. So in this video today, I'm going to talk about practice because, as many of you already know, practice is one of my favorite subjects to discuss because it is so important to becoming a good musician. I mean, it's important to becoming good at anything, whether you're an athlete, whether you're an accountant, whatever it may be. Everything requires practice. And, with piano, practice gets such a negative connotation towards it, and I want to try and change that for you as much as I can and make it something enjoyable, because that is actually what helped me transition from being an amateur at the piano to pretty good. So it's definitely an important part of your growth, whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced. These are always concepts we can use, no matter whether you're reading the simplest piece or reading the most advanced piece. These concepts, they all go together. So I'm going to jump into it. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to download the piece that is in the description of this video so you can follow along. You don't have to, but it could help. All right, so this piece is called Walk With Me, and I'm going to basically just take you through what a practice routine should look like with a piece. We're just going to look at a single piece here. Obviously, your practice routines can grow to where you're working on a piece, an exercise, scales, all at the same time, but for this specific video, we're just going to focus on practicing a single piece, whether it's an exercise or a piece. So this piece is called Walk With Me. It's 8 measures long, fairly simple, fairly on the beginner side, but these concepts will apply to everything. All right, so before I don't want to play it for you because I want to take you through the whole routine. So the first thing you essentially do when you get a new piece of music is do what I call a first read through. This is where you just try and read the piece. You do your best, even if you're not good at reading, even if you're great at reading, whatever, you give it a first read through. So I'm going to give it a first read through, more from a beginner standpoint. So I may purposely make mistakes and common things that happen on a piece like this, but I'll give it a first read through. So here it goes. All right, so that was my first read through. I struggled with it. No big deal. That is the point of a first read through, right? A lot of people get confused and think the first read through is what we need to play perfectly. No, that's not true, right? That is what the purpose of a first read through is, to learn what is happening in the piece. What is our right hand doing? What is our left hand doing? What rhythms are we doing? What does this piece even sound like? If it's a more familiar piece, then it's easier to actually read because you know the song. But if it's a totally unfamiliar piece, it's hard. You don't know what it's supposed to sound like. So I just did a first read through, and that was my attempt at it. So right away you can tell this piece was not easy for me, right? I did not just breeze my way through. I didn't keep a steady tempo. There was no tempo. I was struggling to get some notes. I was hesitating, right? It wasn't a good first read through. I'm not ready to move on from this piece. So right away I should be able to then, from here, go into working on just a small section of the piece and saying, you know what, that first 8 measures was a bit too much to try and work on it all at once. I want to break it into a smaller section. So what I'll first do is just say, okay, let me just look at the first 2 measures. So I'll look at the first 2 measures. Now here you have the choice to either break up the hands, so you can play right hand by itself, right? And then you play the left hand. Now, important is to make sure that you are actually following the tempo, right? So you're giving your quarter notes 1 count. You're trying to stay in tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you find you're struggling to keep it in tempo, it most likely means you're not familiar enough with what notes you're playing, and you need to go a little bit slower and just figure out the notes. So you can do that for one hand, or you could do that for both hands together. I like to keep both hands playing together, unless an individual hand is a little more challenging and I actually need to figure it out one hand at a time. But generally I like to just do both hands together and slowly. So I'm just working on these first 2 measures. Right, still some hesitation. I'm not fully comfortable with it. And then I'm just going to do this measure again. And I'm going to keep doing it until it gets easier and easier to play, and I'm allowed to stay in tempo more with it. now it's slowly getting better and better, right? This is my third time playing it. I'll do it one more time maybe. I want to prove to myself that I could play it about 3 times in a row easily and keep a tempo, right? So it's not important that I'm going fast, right? I'm not going... More importantly is, can I just keep a steady tempo with it? So even if I only get it at this speed, it may seem slow, but speed is not our goal here. We're learning, can we play these 2 measures in time? So we'll play it at a slow speed. Then once you can play it slowly, then you can start to increase speed. Right? You increase speed slowly. And then you say, okay, now let me try a little bit of a faster tempo. And this is where a metronome can really start to come into play with your practice. A lot of people hate the metronome, but it is so helpful for helping, our timing, because it is meant to just hit exactly every beat. So I'll set the metronome to something like 70. Maybe 60, something on the slower side, and I'll try it now. Right, and I'll do it a few times until I feel confident that I can play it with the metronome. And remember, we're just working on these 2 measures, trying to get them as perfected as possible. As you can hear, it's getting better and better. Alright, so now I've proven I could play it at 70. So now I have the choice, do I want to continue now and try the next 2 measures, or do I actually want to build up speed on the first 2 measures? I like to build speed up with the whole piece, so I like to just get the first 2 measures to a reasonable speed, like 60 or 70, and then move on. So next, then I would move on to measures 3 and 4 and do the exact same process. I would try and play the measures first, and I would see, am I having any hesitations, or is it pretty easy for me? If I notice I'm having a lot of hesitations, then I have to maybe separate the hands or just try it much, much slower, like 1, 2, and just read it note by note, right? Not worrying about speed or even tempo here, now just worrying about getting the notes. And I'll follow that process there. After I finish the 4th measure, I don't like to move on to measures 5 and 6, because now I like to say, hey, let me see if I can combine the first 4 measures now, those 4 measures that I've learned. And then you do that for the rest of the piece. And that really becomes the process. And the thing that people forget, and I know it seems like, wow, this is such a big process to learn a song. Is this really what it takes? And the answer is, yes. I mean, it may happen quicker for you or take even longer for you depending on your level, right? If this piece is considered pretty easy for you to read and you can sit down the first time and play it, then no. Then you probably don't need to sit measure by measure with this one. But if the first time you read it, you're really struggling to keep any sense of tempo and you don't really know where your fingers are, then that's where we really have to break it down and say, hey, this is very hard for me. I can only look at 1 measure at a time. Hey, this is kind of hard for me. I think I can handle 2. But what I always say is rather set a smaller goal. I'd rather accomplish a small goal really fast than set this overwhelming goal and never be able to achieve it. It feels better accomplishing a goal. So anyways, that is a good practice tip, and that is what you should really follow with any piece, because we get in this habit of wanting to just move on to the next piece, and in my opinion, it's not necessary. You get so much more out of really studying and working on one piece than just playing 20 pieces, but all very mediocrely, because you never really give yourself the time to get the piece down. So this is a process whenever you really want to get a piece down. Once you get it down with the metronome throughout the whole thing using that process, then you go into memorization, which I will make another video for. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and as always, if you have any questions for me, you can email me at digitalpianoschool@gmail.com or visit us on our website, www.digitalpianoschool.com. Comment below if you have any questions, and hope to see you again soon.